Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss the new stories we share. Let's begin. The black SUV pulled up to pump 3 and something in my chest tightened like a warning. I had learned to read people in the 18 months since David died. The tired truckers who bought carnations for wives they missed. The teenagers grabbing roses before prom. The guilty husbands purchasing lilies at midnight. But this man was different. He stepped out of the vehicle slowly, his Italian shoes touching the cracked concrete like it might contaminate him. Silver hair, pressed suit, a watch that cost more than my apartment. He didn't look at the gas pumps. He looked directly at me. I clutched my bucket of flowers tighter, the plastic handles cutting into my palms. How much for the whole thing? His voice was steady, measured. Sir, I sell them individually, $3 each. Or I'll take everything. I blinked. 63 flowers, $189, more than I'd made in the past 2 weeks combined. Are you sure? He pulled out his wallet and handed me $200 bills without breaking eye contact. Keep the change. My hands trembled as I took the money, not from excitement, from fear, because the way he was looking at me wasn't the way strangers look at each other. It was recognition. You're Margaret, aren't you? The world stopped. The hum of the gas station lights became deafening. I hadn't told anyone my real name since I started selling flowers here. Everyone called me Maggie. The receipt said cash. I was invisible by design. How do you know my name? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he picked up a single white rose from my bucket and studied it like it contained secrets. Your husband was David Chen, software engineer. Died in a car accident on Highway 47. January 15th of last year. Left you with nothing because the company claimed his shares were voided by a clause nobody told him about. My vision blurred. I stepped backward, my hip colliding with the newspaper stand. Who are you? Someone who should have found you sooner. He extended his hand not for a handshake, but as an offering. My name is Richard Harrington. I was your husband's business partner, and what happened to you was my fault. The words hung between us like smoke. I thought about running, about screaming, about the pepper spray in my apron pocket that I'd never had to use but always kept close. David never mentioned a partner. He wouldn't have. I was a silent investor. I stayed in the shadows while he built everything. Richard's jaw tightened, and when he died, I stayed in the shadows while they took it all from you. The gas station attendant inside was watching us now. A woman with a crying toddler hurried past, casting nervous glances. Why are you here now? Because I finally found the documents he left behind, and because you deserve to know what really happened that night on Highway 47. My heart stopped. What do you mean, what really happened? Richard glanced at the surveillance camera above us, then back at me. Not here, come with me and I'll show you everything. Your husband didn't die in an accident, Margaret. I should have walked away. Every instinct screamed danger, stranger, trap. But 18 months of grief had taught me something that survival instincts couldn't override. I was already dead inside. Whatever truth waited in that SUV couldn't hurt me more than the emptiness already had. 5 minutes, I said, and we stay in public view. Richard nodded and gestured toward a diner across the street. The neon sign buzzed, promising coffee and pie. Neutral ground. We sat in a corner booth, the cracked vinyl seats groaning beneath us. I kept my phone in my hand, thumb hovering over the emergency button. Start talking. He pulled a manila envelope from his jacket and slid it across the table. My fingers hovered over it like it might burn. David and I built a company together 7 years ago, carbon capture technology. We had patents worth billions, but we had a third partner, someone David trusted. Martin Webb, I whispered. Richard's eyes widened. You know him? He came to the funeral, gave a speech about what a visionary David was, then served me with papers 3 days later saying the life insurance was contested. The memories crashed over me, the shock of the casket, the empty chairs because David's family lived overseas and couldn't get visas in time, the lawyer telling me I had 30 days to vacate our home. Martin didn't just take your insurance money, Margaret. He took everything. The patents, the contracts, the offshore accounts David had set up for you, and the future children you talked about having. My throat closed. We had been trying for 2 years. The nursery was already painted yellow. How do you know about that? Because David told me. The week before he died, he called me at 3 in the morning, said he'd found something wrong in the books, said Martin was siphoning funds and forging signatures. He was going to expose him. I stared at the envelope on the table. And then he died. In a single-car accident on a dry, straight road, in a car that had just been serviced, with no witnesses. The diner seemed to shrink around us. The clatter of dishes became distant. All I could hear was my own heartbeat. You're saying Martin killed my husband. I'm saying the timing was convenient, and that 6 months ago I hired a private investigator who found this. He tapped the envelope. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were photographs, bank statements, and a police report I'd never seen. But what broke me was the last item, a printed email from David, dated 2 days before his death. "Richard, if something happens to me, make sure Margaret knows the truth. The flash drive is in the place only she would know. Tell her I'm sorry I couldn't protect her better." A sound escaped my throat, something between a sob and a gasp. He knew, I breathed. He knew they were going to kill him. Richard reached across the table and gently closed my hand around the papers. "And he left you the evidence to take them down. The place only she would know." I whispered the words to myself as we drove through the darkness, the city lights fading into suburban quiet. Richard followed my directions without question, his headlights cutting through the fog that had rolled in like a shroud. The community garden sat behind the elementary school where David used to volunteer on weekends. Most people didn't know it existed, hidden behind a rusted fence and overgrown hedges. But I knew. "Wait here," I told Richard. "This I do alone." He nodded, and I stepped into the night. The cold bit through my thin jacket as I walked the familiar path. Plot 17, our plot. The tomatoes we'd planted together had long since died, but the stone marker remained, the one David had placed the day we decided we were ready to start a family. "This is where our kids will learn that good things take time." I could still hear his voice, warm and patient, as he pressed the stone into the soil. I knelt in the dirt, my fingers finding the familiar edges. Underneath, wrapped in plastic and preserved like a message in a bottle, was a small flash drive taped to a handwritten note. "Maggie, if you're reading this, then I failed. I tried to fix things quietly, but some messes are too big for quiet. The drive has everything. Bank transfers, forged documents, recorded conversations. Martin will destroy anyone who threatens his money, and I was too slow to realize I'd become a threat. I should have told you sooner. I was trying to protect you. I was trying to protect us. Find Richard. He'll know what to do. I love you more than I ever showed. I'm sorry for every morning I was distracted, every dinner I worked through, every moment I took for granted. You deserved better. You still do." David, the tears came silently, streaming down my cheeks and dripping onto the soil where we'd planted hope together. For 18 months, I'd blamed myself, wondered if I'd missed signs, questioned whether the distance I'd felt in those last weeks meant he'd stopped loving me. But he wasn't distant because he'd fallen out of love. He was distant because he was trying to save us. I pressed the note to my chest and let myself cry. Really cry. Not the controlled tears I'd learned to hide at the gas station, but the ugly, gasping sobs of a woman finally understanding the shape of her loss. David hadn't abandoned me to this life of poverty and humiliation. He'd been murdered for trying to prevent it. The rage that followed was unlike anything I'd ever felt. It started in my stomach and spread outward, hot and electric, until my hands stopped shaking and my jaw set with purpose. I walked back to the SUV, the flash drive clutched in my fist. "Did you find it?" Richard asked. I climbed into the passenger seat and stared straight ahead. "I found everything. My voice was steady now, and I want to watch Martin Webb lose everything he stole." Richard started the engine. "Then let's go introduce you to my lawyer." The law office was empty at midnight, but lights blazed on the 12th floor. Richard's lawyer, a woman named Catherine Cross, had silver-streaked hair and the kind of eyes that had seen every lie money could buy. She inserted the flash drive without ceremony and began scrolling through files. Wire transfers to offshore accounts, forged signatures on patent transfers, and she paused, leaning closer to the screen. Audio recordings. My heart hammered as she clicked play. Martin's voice filled the room, smooth and casual, discussing how to handle the David situation with someone whose voice I didn't recognize. "Make it clean, single vehicle, no witnesses. His wife is nobody, she'll just disappear into the system." I gripped the armrest so hard my knuckles went white. Catherine stopped the recording. "This is enough, more than enough, but you need to understand something, Mrs. Chen. Margaret. She removed her glasses and met my gaze with unsettling directness. "Martin Webb has connections at every level, judges, prosecutors, police captains. If we go public with this through normal channels, evidence will disappear. Witnesses will recant. You might even find yourself facing charges for fabricating evidence." The hope that had been building crumbled. "Then what's the point?" "The point is that normal channels aren't our only option." Richard leaned forward. "Martin is currently under consideration for a humanitarian award. The ceremony is in 3 days. 200 of the wealthiest, most influential people in the city will be there, including 3 journalists who have been investigating corporate fraud for years." Catherine nodded. "We release everything simultaneously. The files go to encrypted servers, copies to every major news outlet. The audio plays during Martin's acceptance speech." The audacity of it stole my breath. "He'll know it was me. He'll know it was all of us," Richard said, "and by then he won't be able to touch you. The evidence will be everywhere. His only option will be running." I thought about the flower bucket I'd abandoned at the gas station, the apartment with the leaking ceiling, the nights I'd gone to bed hungry because medicine cost more than food, 18 months of surviving, but this wasn't about survival anymore. I want to be there, I said. At the ceremony. I want to look him in the eyes when he realizes what's happening. Catherine and Richard exchanged glances. That's extremely dangerous, Catherine said carefully. He took my husband, he took my home, he took my future. I stood, something new burning in my chest, something that felt like purpose. He doesn't get to fall without knowing exactly who pushed him. Richard studied me for a long moment, then smiled grimly. David always said you were the brave one. He said he married up. The words hit harder than any blow. David, who had always lifted me up. Even when I felt small. David, who had believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself. I would not let his faith be misplaced. 3 days, I said. Tell me everything I need to know. Catherine pulled out a legal pad and began writing. First, we need to get you a dress and a security detail and an escape plan. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers and champagne, 400 people wrapped in silk and self-importance. I stood at the edge, wearing a dress Catherine had provided. Simple, elegant, forgettable. My job was to blend in until the moment I couldn't. Martin Webb took the stage to thunderous applause. He wore his success like armor, smiling at the crowd with practiced warmth. This award means everything to me, he began, because true success is measured not in what we take, but in what we give. The irony nearly made me laugh. I felt Richard's hand on my shoulder. Catherine's in the control room, 30 seconds. 29, 28. Martin continued his speech, painting himself as a philanthropist, a visionary, a man who gave back. 15, 14. I moved through the crowd, weaving between gowns and tuxedos until I stood at the foot of the stage, close enough to see the cufflinks that cost more than a year of my gas station earnings. 5, 4, 3. The screens behind Martin flickered. His face froze mid-sentence as his own voice filled the room. Make it clean, single vehicle, no witnesses. His wife is nobody, she'll just disappear into the system. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Martin's composure cracked, his eyes darting to the control room, then scanning the audience. Then he saw me. Recognition dawned slowly, followed by horror. The widow, the nobody, standing in his ballroom, wearing his destruction like a crown. You, he breathed into the microphone. Me, I said, my voice carrying further than I expected. The widow of the man you murdered, the nobody you forgot to finish destroying. Security moved toward me, but journalists were already shouting questions. Cameras flashed. The audio continued playing, damning revelation after damning revelation echoing off marble walls. Martin tried to run, but the exits were blocked by guests demanding answers. Catherine had thought of everything. I watched him crumble, not with satisfaction, not with joy, with something quieter and more profound, the release of a weight I'd carried for 18 months, the weight of unanswered questions, of misplaced guilt, of wondering if I'd done something to deserve my own destruction. Richard appeared beside me as security finally escorted Martin away in handcuffs. It's over, he said, but it wasn't, not really. The lawsuits would take years. The money might never fully return. The nursery we'd painted yellow was someone else's room now, but I was no longer invisible. I was no longer nobody. 2 months later, I visited David's grave with fresh flowers, not from a gas station bucket, but from our garden plot at the elementary school. The tomatoes were growing again. I'd planted them myself. I found it, I whispered to the headstone. Everything you left me, and I used it exactly the way you hoped I would. The wind stirred the petals, and for just a moment I could almost hear his voice. I knew you would. I smiled through my tears and placed the flowers gently against the stone. Some loves don't end with death, they just change form. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and visit the channel for more real-life stories.